Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Academy Insider Podcast. Today's episode is the final episode of 2024. Thank you so much to the incredible audience of Academy Insider who's followed along with me. This is exciting. And today's episode is going to be a great way to conclude 2024. I'm so excited to do it because I'm joined by Eli Bremer. Eli Bremer is actually an Air Force Academy graduate from the class of 2000, but this is where it goes crazy. He's actually an Olympian and then a 2 times World Military Games alumni, and he won a gold medal in the pentathlon in the World Military Games. This guy is an elite athlete and has been connected in the military sports space for a long time. And what is really cool is if you're listening to this right now, there is a proposal for the United States of America to host the 2027 World Military Games in Charlotte. If you have no idea what the World Military Games is, I don't blame you. We haven't put a ton of emphasis or recognition around it. And so that's what this episode is all about today, is we're going to highlight military sports and military sport culture, because after your time at the academy, your sports playing career doesn't have to end. There are so many ways to compete at the all Navy level, at the Armed Forces service level, and compete in international tournaments. And so if that's something that's interesting to you, then take a listen to this episode. It's so cool. We cover so many different aspects about the importance of sport and military culture, and then highlight and talk about the World Military Games, which will be coming to the United States in 2027. So take a listen, reach out if you have any questions. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a great day. The Academy Insider Podcast is sponsored by the Vermeer Group, a residential real estate company that serves the United States Naval Academy community and other select clientele in both California and Texas. If I can ever answer a real estate related question for you or connect you with a trusted Academy affiliated agent in the market which you're in, please reach out to me directly at grant@thevermeergroup.com. You can also reach out to me on my LinkedIn page, Grant Vermeer, and I'd be happy to respond to you there. Thank you so much. And now let's get back to the episode. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Academy Insider Podcast. Eli, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. I think this is going to be a super fun topic, obviously, as some sports fanatics talking about military sports, which is great. But before we do jump into it, if you just mind providing a little bit of context to the Academy Insider audience about who you are, how you ended up actually at the Air Force Academy, a little bit about your time in the Air Force, both as an Air Force officer and an athlete, and then currently what you're doing now.
Well, yeah, Grant, thanks for having me on. It's great to be here after a couple minor technical difficulties to get here. But I'm Eli Bremer. I graduated from the other service academy, the Air Force Academy, in 2000. When I hang out with West Point and Annapolis grads, and they're like, "Did you go to West Point? No. Did you go to Annapolis? No. But you said you went to a service academy." I'm like, "There are 3." I always get into that. But I grew up here in Colorado, actually just north of the Air Force Academy. And my older brother graduated 3 years before me, and he's actually retiring as an 06 in a couple months. So he's had a long career there. But was stationed here in Colorado Springs at Schriever Space Force, what's now Space Force Base, and Peterson Space Force Base. But I did a lot of time in sports and sort of became a sports expert in the military. I was a 2-sport athlete at the Air Force Academy, but parlayed that over into time in the world-class athlete program and competed in the Olympics in Beijing in 2008. I broadcast 4 Olympics. I now advise the Air Force's sports program. I used to run the largest Olympic sponsorship program in the country. So do a lot with sports marketing. And today we'll be talking about my next venture, which is the World Military Games, which you're familiar with too.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'm so excited about it because if you are watching like on YouTube and you see the video aspect of this, obviously I have my jersey from the Military World Games hanging up behind me, which is so cool because I think one of the things that is really interesting that people don't really consider when they attend a service academy, especially athletes, is they assume that their sports career is over after the academy. And while, again, we're going to have a lot of discussion pieces on all this when it comes to professional sports, etc., but there is this thing that we call the Armed Forces Sports Program, which gives people opportunity to compete at a very high level still after their time at the academy and when they're in what we call the Navy, the fleet. I'm not sure what they call it in the Air Force, but when you're actually an officer out doing the thing and working, there's still an opportunity to compete on what we call, for us, again, the all Navy team and the all Air Force team. And so my question to you, actually, Eli, is when you were going through this, again, for basketball, we had an inter-services tournament where like the Air Force team played the Navy team, which played the Army team, which played the Marine Corps team. Was that similar in your sector? Did you guys have you would just go straight to competing with the USA Armed Forces team, making your way out to international competition?
It's a little different for each sport. So I tracked really up the Olympic chain into the world-class athlete program, which the Army has, the Air Force has. the Navy does not have yet. We're working on some options for expanding the opportunities for Navy and Marine service
Yeah.
members to be able to participate. But yeah, in most cases, they're sort of selected through that normal process. You apply through your base gym or something like that.
Sure.
There are in the Air Force and the Army, there are athletes who are assigned full time into their Olympic programs. So
Mm.
by the time I was competing in the military events, I was the national champion. I was, at one point ranked top 2 in the world. So we didn't have the same type of selection. But granted, to me, what matters here is a lot of people ask me the question, why are sports important in the military? And
Sure.
and I think it's great to go back to the start and MacArthur's quote of on the fields of friendly strife are sown the seeds that on other fields and other days will bear the fruits of victory. And I am such a firm believer that if you want to instill a warrior ethos into young men and women, one of
Mhm.
the best ways to do it is by sport participation, and the more the better.
Yep. No, 100%. I couldn't agree more for both my time at the academy and after, kind of in the fact that a lot of my leadership development happened on the court, right? Like there are so many dynamics that kind of directly relate to that experience.
Mhm.
And a question I have for you, since again we're talking about the military world games, especially, which again is going to be a fun introduction in this topic. You're someone who competed in both the military world games and the actual Olympics. And so for someone who's not aware, if you were to play for some of these like the armed forces sports teams every 4 years, once every 4 years, kind of in a military or an Olympic cycle, there is what we call the military world games, right? And so I competed in 2019 in Wuhan, China. There are over 100 countries there, 20 plus sports being played, billions of dollars invested by China in infrastructure and everything to actually host this event. How, like, can you describe the difference or similarities between competing in a military world games and the actual Olympics, just to kind of put in perspective how big this event is and like its legitimacy?
Yeah, people in America are very unfamiliar with this event. But if I sort of start by talking about the Olympics, because this is where it all begins. The Olympics are the largest games event in the world. Okay,
Yep.
the Olympic rings are some of, if not the most recognizable commercial mark in the world. They're some of the most well respected. It's one of the most well
Yep.
respected brands. I mean, I've got the Olympic rings behind me right here for people that are watching. And so the International Olympic Committee under them has an organization called CISM, which is French, the Council International du Sport Militaire. And that organization, so this is part of the Olympic family, organizes all the military sports globally. They've got 141 member nations. And starting in 1995, they started organizing World Military Games. CISM has been around since 1953. They were formed after World War II to promote friendship through sport between the Allied countries. During the Cold War era, it became sort of the proxy, one of the healthy proxy battles between the United States and the Soviets was sports play. So anyway, over the last, what is it, 3, 4 decades now, we've been hosting World Military Games inside the Olympic system, and so globally, the World Military Games are actually the second largest games event in the world, only behind the Olympics. In Wuhan, where you competed, they had 10,000 athletes, 120 nations. To put that in perspective, I've competed in 3 different games events: the Olympic Games, the World Military Games, and the Pan American Games. And the World Military Games is 50 to 100% larger than the Pan American Games.
Yep.
So, people sort of think it's the Warrior Games, that's about 500 people. Okay.
Yep.
This is 20 times the size of the Warrior Games. And in terms of quality, the World Military Games are also the second highest level Olympic style sporting event in the world, only behind the Olympics. Okay.
Yep.
It is more difficult to win a gold medal at the World Military Games, statistically speaking, and in terms of quality of the athletes, than at the Pan American Games or the Goodwill Games. Military athletes in the Paris Olympics won almost 175 medals.
Yep.
So 10%, about 10% of the Olympians in Paris were military. So
Yeah.
the scope is way bigger, and you saw this
Mhm.
firsthand.
Firsthand.
I mean, in Wuhan, China, they put it on. There was a huge stadium there. It
Yeah.
was
It was unbelievable, right? And again, because what's funny is even being in the military and competing on the team, I had no idea about this event. And when we went out to China, right, like they put on a massive opening ceremony, massive. President Xi Jinping spoke at the event, right? Like they had, I kid you not, this is one of the wildest things. Like Jackie Chan came zip lining down into the stadium performing as a singer. Like he's a pop star in China.
Oh yeah.
I only know him as an actor. I was like, what is going on? Like, this is the craziest, coolest experience of all time. And then, like you were talking about, you were walking through kind of the mess hall, the cafeteria that they have there, and everyone from their respective countries have the Olympic rings tattooed on them. Like the majority of athletes who are competing, who are also military in their home country, are Olympic athletes, right? And so, like, I'm walking around like I was on a submarine 4 months ago, and now I'm here trying to compete like against professional athletes. I was like, what is going on? And so, again, from the level of competition, like it's so high, and that's why I want to turn it a little bit to like training for these games, because in the sport of basketball specifically, we would get literally 1 month to go TAD, temporary assigned duty, to train, to like go to a training camp and then get ready to play. In my opinion, especially on the basketball side, again, we haven't taken it that seriously. The fact that I was playing in these games is crazy, right? Like I was an okay athlete, but like not nearly like the level of all this is going on. And so, obviously you have a little bit more with like the world class athlete program that kind of has people allowed to train. Do you mind breaking down, between sports, or just the overall generalizing how we train athletes for these events?
Well, and unfortunately, Grant, we haven't done a good job of it.
Mhm.
And that's led to some not very good results in the past. And
Sure.
this is a very important part of soft power for the United States. So again, back to what I was saying earlier, people sort of have asked the question, isn't sports just fun and games and stuff like that? And I said, no. If you go back to the ancient Greek times, this was how we trained, warriors for literally over 2,000 years. Sports training has been the foundational training for warrior ethos. And so it's not just about, as I said, fun and games, but the United States until recently, and this is something that, again, thank you for having me on, because I'm trying to spread the word about what we're doing here. We're really working on bringing the United States up to par with the rest of the world, because other countries and folks like China, North Korea, Germany has a very large sports unit. There's even countries like Turkey, Egypt, Mexico. Countries all over the world are using this to train their athletes, number one, but also it creates an environment where their young people get a chance to sort of open their eyes and see the world. I'm curious, had you ever been to China before that?
Nope. Literally first time stepping in anywhere in the Indo-Pacific, honestly. I
Mhm.
had never been outside of Europe and the United States and Latin America.
And you've probably never heard of Wuhan, which I think has over 10 million people in it.
A huge city, huge city. And obviously COVID kind of made it more infamous, but like, yes,
Um,
like there was never like Wuhan, a massive industrial like business city in China. I've never heard of it.
And so, this gives like from just the American point of view, it gives our young men and women in the service an opportunity to go out and see the world through different eyes.
Yes.
When I was competing in the Air Force, I actually landed in Egypt as the war broke out in Iraq, and when the U.S. invaded Iraq, and we actually had to borrow uniforms from the Canadians because there were riots in the street and things like that. So I was a young lieutenant when that happened, and had a very profound impact on me. And then back onto later that year, I competed in my very first World Military Games in 2003 in Italy, and I would eventually go on to compete in 2011 in Brazil as well. But as an active duty Air Force officer, I was able to have very minor but official contact with North Koreans and Iranians, because
Yes.
because in sport you have the ability to mingle there, and
Hmm.
it gives a great opportunity for them to see us, to see that we're not terrible people. We also make some connections that can be extremely valuable over time. Um,
Yeah.
in fact, part of the reason why this has come about, that the United States is anticipating to host the World Military Games, is that as a young lieutenant, after competitions, I would periodically go get beers with another young lieutenant from Brazil. And
Yeah.
that young lieutenant is now a full colonel who's in charge of the entire operation. And he said, "Hey, Eli, y'all need to belly up to the bar here, and we need to get the United States military more involved in international sporting." So
Mhm.
it was that international friendship 20 years ago that has given the United States of America this opportunity.
No, 100%. I couldn't agree more. Obviously, my scale of friendship and relationship built out of that is a little bit different, but it was the same thing. I built a really close friendship over time while I was in Wuhan with a Brazilian golfer. right? Like he's currently he makes his way into, he's on like a kind of tour outside of the United States, but continues to golf professionally, very successful. But again, like you're saying, it gives us an opportunity to build relationships with these athletes in other countries who are going to be in powerful positions at some point in time in their respective country. Like this is fostering international relationship very legitimately, like very genuinely, like building these foundations of relationships early on with people who are going to be in decision-making positions and authorities over time.
Yeah.
Right. And so,
Grant, when actually
fascinating.
back to that, probably the most formative time in my life, a couple of years after graduation, when I was competing for my first Olympics, my uncle is Ambassador Paul Bremer, who was taking over Iraq and working on the reconstruction. And it's a little known story, but one of the very first things he did, the International Olympic Committee had kicked out the Iraqi Olympic team. And
Yep.
so, they were totally fine with Uday and Qusay Hussein, committing human rights atrocities on their athletes. But when the United States took over, they wanted to almost disgrace the Iraqis further. So my uncle flew around the country setting up elections because the International Olympic Committee said the only way you will be allowed back in the Olympics is if you have fair and open elections for your Olympic Committee. Now I want to think about this. For 4 decades, they've been living under a totalitarian system of Saddam Hussein. There were no elections. So he flew around. They set up the elections, and they got their Olympic Committee reformed, which was the first elections in Iraq. But he called me up one day and said, "Hey, I'm going to send out a number of our aspiring Olympians to the Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs." And I said, "What, you're in a war zone. Why are you doing this?" And he said, "These are going to be the future leaders of the Iraqi nation. And I need them to go over to the United States to meet other Olympic athletes and military members so that they have a good opinion of us and that we have these sort of back channel connections." And it was about 4 weeks later, they arrived at the training center and I became friends with them. And, just it really created an opportunity. I'm sure some of them are now at the highest levels of government over there and have a strong affinity for the United States because of it.
Yeah, 100%. And like you're mentioning, it's so much more in these relationships as well. It's so important, but so much more. And there's a desire within our country to dominate in everything we do and compete at a really high level. And again, honestly, if we were to go back to the results of the 2019 World Military Games, the United States does not have that many medals, right? Like we did. Again, this is not something that we've taken that seriously. I would say, again, really championed by the fact that like I was competing in this thing, right? Like, in your opinion, why do we need to take this very seriously? And what can we be doing in preparation for this World Military Games that's proposed to potentially be hosted in the United States coming up in a couple years?
Well, I think we need to have a resurgence in the United States, particularly in the military, the importance of sports and why it's good. And there's so many reasons. I mean, the reason you and I even connected a week ago was because I was looking for that commercial that someone talked about how the Navy has big decks. Great,
Big decks, baby.
totally didn't know that about the Navy. But I was like really curious because obviously that was not produced from the Pentagon. So I thought, I wonder who the heck did this. And I'm searching around for it. And there I come across your podcast. And I look in the background. I'm like, okay, I see your Navy jersey. And then I see the USA jersey and, Googled you. And I'm like, oh, that's super interesting. Grant played in the World Military Games. It opens up a lot of doors and a lot of connections. But I want people's minds to be opened up as to the importance of this too. Because like I said earlier, this is about fomenting in our young men and women in the military a warrior ethos and understanding that competition matters and losing on the field of play teaches you how to win. And we need our service members to be winners, to think like winners, because when there is another war, and there will be, the United States will engage in a war at some point, we need these folks really well trained. So fortunately, I'm getting, at the political level, this is bipartisan, I'm getting it from both parties, support for the idea that the United States military needs to tilt back into at least a partial focus on excellence in sports. And so, there's an appetite now to create a much bigger environment where our servicemen and women are able to come in and participate for a longer period of time, so that we're not pulling them from a submarine and saying, "Hey, good luck, go beat China."
Yeah.
Because guess what? The Chinese are taking this seriously. And
Yes.
call me a a pig-headed American, but I don't think Americans should show up on foreign soil and not have the very, very best chance we have of kicking their butts.
Yep.
And so, I want our servicemen and women to be out there with the best chance to succeed. I want these other countries to see America as strong. We're able to show over. We're able to annihilate them on the field of play, and then have a beer with them afterwards too. We can do all these things. So we're working on promoting this concept where we would have a much larger participation program in the United States military, probably about 5x what we have right now in our Olympic program. But it also serves, there's no secret that the U.S. military is really struggling in recruiting right now.
Yes.
And the latest numbers appear to be about 17% of high school seniors are eligible to serve in the military. And I think quite disgracefully, we've been dropping the standards. Well, if we go to war with, China, Iran, Russia, they're not going to drop their standards for us. So, one of the ways we can keep the high standards is by showcasing the military as a place that's welcoming to athletes, so that athletes on their high school cross country team or high school wrestling team or basketball team look at this and say, culturally, that's a friendly place for athletes, because those are the people, where that 17% of high school seniors are, they're on their sports teams. And it's not that they're going to come in to do sports, but if the United States military is viewed as a place of athletic excellence, it's much more intuitive for them to say, okay, I get it. I should consider this as a career.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And it's really interesting. And again, just pulling perspectives from some of the other militaries that we witness like playing, right? Like when we competed against some of these other countries, specifically Lithuania, who won the gold medal in basketball. Again, when we talk to them, they're like, hey, yeah, no, our military duty is playing basketball, right? Like that's what we do. We play professionally, and then we come together as a team here to get repetitions together, practice together, play together to get ready to compete in these tournaments. Is that something that you see also quite literally as a pathway of a projected way that we can do this? And again, giving people an opportunity to, like you're saying, really have their military duty be preparing to go compete and win on an international level. And how do you foresee that like coming to life if possible?
Yeah, 100%. And it's for multiple reasons. Again, like just delving in my personal life, I'm actually very close with the Lithuanian athletes who I competed against. And one of them, a female, Laura Asadiskaita, just got named to the Lithuanian parliament. So, here I am, little Air Force grad sitting in Colorado Springs. I have personal contact now with a parliament member over there because, her husband and I were very good friends. He's an Olympic silver medalist. I don't know how many times we've gone on runs together, trained together, been, at competitions together. But also, here's the other interesting thing. Athletes tend to do very well. If you look at the service academies, the reason that they keep such a high level of sports team, outside the fact it's great for the image of the schools, but these athletes tends to be one of the greatest predictors of how they do. Little known fact, I don't know if you know this. Do you know who the most famous athlete from my sport was? And he went to a service academy?
I don't actually.
George Patton competed in the Olympics in 2012, or in 1912, got fifth place in the pentathlon. Okay, so when we recruit athletes into the military, a lot of these young people come in and say, "Hey, this is really fun. I'm going to get to go, extend my career by a few years." But they will oftentimes go on and serve with incredible distinction. One such individual I've known for it's approaching 3 decades now. He was a standout swimmer and runner in high school. Then he was a scholarship swimmer in college. The Army recruited him into their world-class athlete program, where he went to 2 Olympics in Sydney in 2000, Athens 2004. He would later cross-commission into the Air Force, became a combat rescue officer. So he did special operations, got a master's degree at Kellogg, a graduate certificate at Harvard, became the aide-de-camp to the Chief of Staff of the Air Force, and retired as a full colonel. So, the reason is that you can't divorce that winning, that, I'm going to win at all costs. I mean, his name was Chad Senior, and I've known him for years. We roomed together at the World Military Games in 2003. But I mean, we've been friends for 3 decades. And I watched Chad at the military championships in 2000. The first time I competed in a military sporting event, we were in Switzerland. And he was running from fifth place into third place. And when he passed the guy that was in third place, the running 3,000-meter run was right at the end. He didn't stop and just sort of hold his place. He knew he couldn't get to second. He put the afterburners on, and he basically wanted to humiliate the guy behind him. He spent the entire rest of the night throwing up. Okay. So this is the level of like warrior ethos that Chad had, which is why he went into
Mhm.
special operations, why he did so many combat deployments, why he served with such distinction. So, I believe if we're recruiting these people in, they're going to be the highest quality people we can get into some of these jobs.
No, it's super interesting, right? Again, I think again this is purely anecdotal, at least from my side right now, right? But again, the large majority of the Navy football team ends up as Marine Corps officers, right? And a large majority, some of my really close friends are now captains in the Marine Corps, infantry, or kind of made their way over to MARSOC, right? And then you have a bunch of the lacrosse guys, the wrestler guys, etc., who end up as SEALs, right? Water
Mhm.
polo and swimmers are a bunch of our EOD guys that are swimming a ton, right? And so it's an interesting perspective there. And do you happen to know off the top of your head, data wise, like how many flag officers across our military kind of have a athletic background, whether that be in college or high school or anything of the sort?
I, I don't know the total actual numbers, but I do know it's
Yeah.
disproportionately high. But that makes
Yeah.
sense. If
Mhm.
you actually look at like society as a whole, there was an Ernst and Young study a few years ago that showed that 94% of female executives, this is in the private sector, 94 participated in organized sports growing up, with 50% playing sports in college. So whether you're going to the highest levels of business or the highest levels of the military, sports training is absolutely foundational. And I think it's
Mhm.
because sports are pretty brutal, and you know there you have a winner and a loser, and
Mhm.
I'm 100% sure some of the lowest points in your life have come in sports from losing, and
Yeah,
the
oh, yeah.
highest points have come from winning. And you also know that
Right.
99.99% of everything is not the game, it's getting ready for the game, it's having your act together. These are the lessons
Mhm.
that athletes learn in sports that they tend to take on with them. And again, you can't divorce that from the athlete. You can't say, okay, suddenly you're out of sports. You've forgotten everything you learned about hard work, you've forgotten everything you've learned about teamwork or coachability, or
Mhm.
the ability to give feedback to a teammate and gain their respect so that you can make each other better. These are all some of the greatest skills to create great leaders.
Foundational, right? Like my ability, and again, I talk about this a lot, that like being a junior officer in the military, one of the number one things you have to do is not be afraid of conflict, but two, be really good at having difficult conversations with people when people are not meeting the mark or upholding like the standard that needs to be. And that is something that you build through sport, right? Like the amount of times you have to go to a teammate and like get on someone, or like again, it's like, hey, if we want to, like, no, this isn't personal, but if we want to win, right? Like if we want to win, then I need you to play your role, and your role needs to be done extremely well. And like again, this is something that we've talked about a lot, right? And I need you to perform in this way. And on the same front, I was sharing a story last night, actually, with a West Point guy here in Texas. We went out and we got dinner, and we were sharing stories about basketball and how the preparation was one of the wildest things. We even went back to our high school days where our high school coaches had printed out these scouting reports, right? Like the most detailed, in-depth scouting reports of all time. And we competed on like really good high school teams as well in our area. And it was crazy, but we would spend hours learning tendencies of the players that we were going to play against, both as a team, as a unit, as an organization, but the individual. Like, hey, when number 12 gets the ball on the left wing, he's going to be driving right into the middle of the lane, right? Like knowing that each player has a tendency, has something that they do that is backed up by a ton of observation and film and study, right? Like when it comes to winning a basketball game, there is so much preparation that goes into it. Whether you want to compare that to an intelligent side of the military, right? But you have to know, you have to observe, you have to study, and then you have to prepare yourself to be able to take away what they do well, right? And like there's so much comparison in that
Well,
world.
and there's the other one is a four-letter word that has become completely unwelcome in much of the modern military, which is
Mhm.
risk.
Yep.
And the military, the last couple decades, from what I've seen, has really hunkered down and become a very anti-risk or set of organizations. And yet we need our leaders to have the ability to understand, know, and manage risk. And in sports, you have to know that. In basketball, it's understanding, am I going to pass the ball? Am I going to shoot? And risk doesn't mean you succeed every time. I sort of jokingly say, I talk to senior officers who will tell me we're allowed to take risk as long as you never fail. And the greatest things I've ever learned in my life were not successes in sports, they were failures. And
Yep.
sports gives you a chance to fail and to learn how to handle that, to learn how to get better because of it. And I think we have, for a variety of reasons, I don't think it's any one person. I think culturally the military has adopted an anti-risk position. And
Mhm.
and there's some reasons for that. In my former service, we fly airplanes that are worth hundreds of millions of dollars, and so you don't necessarily want a 26-year-old flying an F-22 to take a lot of risk. But on the other hand, they need to understand what it is, because there may come a day when we need them to take some risk and evaluate it and understand the components of that. So in my private sector world, I deal with risk all the time, and I do believe that that's one of the greatest lessons sports can teach you is understanding risk, accepting it, and being able to look at something and say, you know what, I'm going to fail. I'm going to fail a
Mhm.
lot, and I have to be able to stomach that, because in
Sure.
the military we need you to be able to understand that concept, because when we need you to succeed, we really need you to succeed.
Yep. No, 100%. It's fascinating. And so we really have established again, leading up in this conversation, the importance of sport, right? And so especially as it comes to military culture, etc. Now, I do want to tailor to something again that you had brought up early, which is this idea of a world military games potentially being hosted in the United States. I want to turn it over to you if you're willing to share as much as you can. Again, your thought, kind of the plan or pathway, where it would be located, sports, etc. Highlight the importance of it, and put out if there's anything we can do as a community as well to support it, try and make this event as good as it can possibly be.
Well, we have a unique opportunity because of my friendship with the president of the International Military Sports Federation. They have offered us, the United States, the opportunity to host the 2027 World Military Games. It'll be hosted in Charlotte, North Carolina, predominantly at the UNC Charlotte campus. We're planning
Okay.
right now on the opening ceremonies being at the Raceway in Charlotte, and closing ceremonies might be at Panther Stadium. We're still looking at that. But I mean, Grant, you walked in the opening ceremonies in China. They do it right. I walked in.
They do it
Like,
right. I'm telling you, that thing was the craziest thing I've ever
yeah,
seen.
and I walked in the opening ceremonies in the Beijing Olympics, and I mean, that was, if you wanted to say a defining moment of my life, three defining moments. The second I threw my hat up in the air at the Air Force Academy when I married my wife, and then and then walking in opening ceremonies. It was just amazing. So opening ceremonies, we anticipate 120,000 people at the Raceway in Charlotte. We anticipate the president of the United States will open this. I mean, we want to show China, hey, we can play here too. And we're hoping to have a major military air show there, maybe a major rock concert and country concert. Can't say yet who we're looking at for that, but that level, because I want, you had 120 nations who went and saw the might of China in 2019. And my goal is to have those same countries come over and see what the United States of America can do. So I want them to see F-22s and the Blue Angels and the Thunderbirds, and see what our air power can do, what our military can do. And then I also want them to see the softer side of America, that we're great people. It's a
Mhm.
great country to come to, because I want those militaries to think twice, carrot and stick. I want them to think twice before they ever think about attacking us. On the other hand, I want them to think those guys are pretty nice. So the plan right now is to have the 2027 World Military Games in Charlotte in probably in June. And you'll appreciate this. We're hoping to house all the athletes together in one village, to be able to promote this idea of the exchange between all the various different service members, forming these connections. We're hoping to have all the venues actually within walking distance, because I know one of the issues they had in Wuhan was that it was really hard to get around.
Really spread out. I mean, hours apart. You were taking buses, trains. It was difficult to get to your stadium, right, and
Yep.
then back to the village.
And
Yep.
so our plan right now is to have everything inside one enormous venue. and that's great for the participants. It's also great for the spectators. This is not
Sure.
a well-known sport. People aren't going to pay $50 to go watch, a judo competition, but they might
Mhm.
pay 50 or $75 for an entry ticket to come in and watch a basketball game, a track, some skydiving, orienteering, some
Sure.
of these sports that they don't get to see every day. So, additionally, the plan right now is to do something that has not been done before, which is to combine an international military expo at the same time, which would be in
Hmm.
downtown Charlotte. And so we would have the major U.S. defense contractors there down there. We'd probably also have then displays inside the large venues. So again, young people, kids. I have a 10-year-old son. He'd love this to come in and see a drone up close or a satellite,
Cool.
presentation.
Hmm.
So we want to showcase this for Americans as well to come in and see the might of our military, to see United States go beat other countries, on the field of play, carry ourselves with pride. But it's going to be a pretty major undertaking. Uh,
Sure.
we're hosting the Olympics in 2028. This will be, as I said, the second largest games that have ever been held in the United States, only behind the Olympics. So we're a little behind the eight ball in timing because we've been waiting on some final government approvals. The incoming Trump administration has assured us we're going to have those approvals very quickly. Then we're moving forward with, there's a lot of federal agencies, state agencies involved. When you're bringing Russians and Iranians and North Koreans and Germans all together, it's very
Yep.
positive, but it's a lot of moving pieces.
A lot of moving pieces. Yeah, a lot of contingency plans you got to build
Yeah.
out. How do we build the the energy behind this event? How do we get eyeballs onto this? How do we build support for this? And how do we turn this into an event that the average American would tune in to watch? Like again, hopefully you get people there in person, but how do we actually build support around this event?
Well, that's one of the things that we're working on doing. The Chinese, they held this major event, but it was very insular, as you saw. They didn't have a
Sure.
lot of outsiders. And our vision for this is to really open this up much more. We've been talking to broadcast partners.
Mhm.
We do believe we've got several that are interested in coming on board. So part of what I've got to do is I've got to match the broadcast partner with the funding sources for that, because
Sure.
there's a lot of this is very missional. And so
Yep.
it's not they just don't know, can we go sell $30 million of advertising? Probably not. So
Mhm.
we're looking at streaming platforms, things like that. We're also just looking at getting the word out. That's why I appreciate what you're doing, having me on, because
Yeah.
your listeners are a lot of our target people. and
Mhm.
and we believe that by connecting with business owners, whether it's defense contractors or whoever, the more partners we bring in on this, the more they're going to promote it. We're already
Yep.
talking to some of the major banking enterprises out there, because they will help us. The defense contractors, these major corporations, they have the ability to also help promote this, which is
Yep.
which is good from a commercial point of view. It's great also to promote this and showcase what the United States and the U.S. military can do. So we have, as I said, a little bit of an abbreviated time schedule. But if for anybody who's listening to this, if you're like, wow,
Yeah.
this is super interesting, I want to get involved. I run a company. We'd be interested in coming on board as a commercial partner. That type of thing. We want to talk, because this is going to be an all hands effort to get this thing off the ground and really show the world how great America can be with this.
100%. And obviously, anyone listening, you can always reach out to me and I will get you in touch with Eli. But if someone wants to reach out to you directly about these questions or has an interest in potentially supporting this project, how can they get in touch with you?
Best way is shoot me an email. My personal email is just my name at Gmail. It's eli.bremer@gmail.com. And particularly if if you got some strategic compatibility with us of some site. We're not signing our large sponsors yet. We are still looking for some bid sponsors. We're hoping. We've applied to be in the presidential inauguration parade, which is run by the U.S. military. We've got about 25 Olympians, and we've got some pro athletes that have signed up to help promote this concept of the military warrior athlete. So, because we haven't fully confirmed, but let's just say there's some famous Annapolis grads that are super interested, that have a strong history in Olympics and in pro sports. And as I said, we've got some gold medalists who are military members who intend to come out. So, if that's something
Sure.
you're interested in, if you want to support that, reach out to me, because again, we don't have any government funds on this right now. Eventually there will be, but we are having to raise some capital around this. So if that's something you're interested in, shoot me an email and we'd love to chat.
I love it. Well, I appreciate it. And something I always ask whenever we bring someone on is, again, at the end of the day, some of our listeners as well who are probably interested in this are just prospective high school students who are trying to learn a little bit about the academy as well. So I just want to turn this opportunity, again, based on all these life experiences that we've had as a result of being an Air Force Academy and a Naval Academy graduate. What's your best recruiting pitch about why young men and women should consider a service academy education?
Can you see what's on my hands here? That's an Olympic ring. That's my Olympic ring. That's my Air Force ring. This one means a whole lot more to me than this one. I've been to the Olympics. I've been top of the world in sports. I've done all that. And I will tell you that the service academy, the people you will meet there are simply unparalleled. It is in my opinion, is the epitome of what a young man or woman can do with their lives. And so if they're considering it, take it seriously, respect it. I grew up next to the Air Force Academy. The people, my biggest mentors were Air Force Academy cadets. My brother went to the Air Force Academy, and so I had great respect for it. One of my lifetime mentors is Senator Ben Nighthorse Campbell. He gave me my nomination to the Academy. He's also a military Olympian. He competed in the Olympics in 1964 while he was in the Air Force. So there are some great things you can do in your life. I've had the opportunity, as said, to do amazing things in my life. Graduating from a United States Service Academy is probably the top of that pinnacle. So, I would encourage you, are you going to have as much fun at a service academy as you will at some of the other schools you get scholarships to? I sure hope not. Or we haven't really succeeded. The doors that it opens. I mean,
Yeah.
from people I've been able to meet, United States senators, billionaires, professional athletes. I mean, across the board, the network I've got. I mean, Grant, the reason we're on the call today is you and I both wear the same, effectively the same ring. And
Yep.
if you're a young person, if you're the parent of a young person, and you want to set your kid up for life, the beauty of a service academy. My extended family came out of the Ivy Leagues. My mom and my dad are both Ivy League educated. You can buy your way into an Ivy League. You can't buy your way into or out of a service academy. And so if you want to be respected for the rest of your life, go to a service academy, kick butt at a service academy, serve your country. It is one of the greatest things you can do.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, Eli, you're the man. Thank you so much for taking this time today. I want to turn it over to you if you have any last thoughts or things that you wanted to bring up that we may not have weaved into the conversation naturally. So I'll just turn it over to you for any last thoughts that you may have.
Well, thanks for having me on. I always appreciate the other service academies, remembering that there is one out here in Colorado. I was at an event in Washington, D.C. a couple of years ago for service academy grads, and this gal comes in and says, "Oh, I don't know you. Did you?" I think she went to West Point. She said, "Did you go to Annapolis?" I said, "No." She said, "Well, this is service academy only." I'm like, "Come on, we exist." But no, thanks for having me on. And seriously, if you're out there and you're thinking about this and saying, "Hey, this is something I want to get involved in. This is something I want to financially support," or "I got a friend I want to introduce you to who runs a company," shoot me an email. I'll say it again. It's eli.bremer, eli.bremer @gmail.com. I'm super easy to reach. Shoot me an email. I'll schedule a call with you. This is a service academy family, and we would love to have all the help that we can get pushing this forward, both for the World Military Games and then also hopefully pushing a resurgence of military sports and the warrior ethos that military sports can help create.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much, Eli. This has been a pleasure. It's always fun getting to share stories about this. And again, when I think back on it, the World Military Games was, my dad and I were talking about it the other day as I was preparing for this interview. Like, the coolest life experience we've ever had. And it's not even close. Like, he came out to China to be a part of it. He was there for the 2 weeks, like came and traveled to all the games. There's nothing like it. And so again, to promote the event, to bring as much attention to it, and to build a pipeline of military sports culture again, to dominate in these events and compete at an extremely high level, is just something that I can get behind every day of the week.
Hey,
So
Grant, when you walked into the opening ceremonies, were y'all chanting USA, USA?
USA the whole time,
Isn't
man.
isn't that just one of the greatest feelings ever?
Chills. Like, I'm telling you, there's a picture of us marching around because it was like a massive track around. Like, we did a huge loop and, carrying the American flag, all, 100 plus athletes of us in our military uniforms, chanting USA as we were walking in, like literal chills, right? Literal chills as the stadium was just, roaring
And,
with
and you
energy.
will never forget that for the rest of your life. You'll never forget that feeling. None of those other
Nope.
young men and women will ever forget that feeling. And that's what I want to bring, as I said, to the next generation.
Yeah, man. Absolutely. Well, this has been incredible. Thank you so much. I can't wait
Thanks.
to hopefully get some people over in your way and support this initiative. So I appreciate you taking the time this morning to talk about it, and I can't wait to bring it to life. And you best believe I'm going to be in Charlotte in 2027. I'm excited to be a part of this in whatever way I can, and go witness some of this amazing stuff
We'll,
that's coming to life.
we'll
So
be
really appreciate
we'll
it.
be happy to have you there. Academy Insider is welcome anywhere.
My guy, I appreciate you. All right. Well, thank you so much to the Academy Insider audience. I hope you had a good listen. Reach out with any questions. Otherwise, have a great day. And thank you so much. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Academy Insider podcast. I really hope you liked it, enjoyed it, and learned something during this time. If you did, please feel free to like and subscribe or leave a comment about the episode. We really appreciate to hear your feedback about everything and continue to make Academy Insider an amazing service that guides, serves, and supports midshipmen, future midshipmen, and their families. Thank you.